First of all, happy 76th Independence Day to all of you. The country of 140 crore people today celebrated this big day with great fervor and with great aspirations, I must say. Friends, today PM Modi, in his, I must say, historic speech, talked upon many things, but precisely speaking, he delved upon some of the important goals for the next 25 years up to 2047 that marks our 100th year of freedom and independence. What Pradhan Mantri or Prime Minister calls Amrit Kaal, the time of 25 years from now on to come. Believe me, all the objectives laid down are very promising, very visionary, and futuristic. And PM is very much right when he talks upon these goals, like goal of developing India into a developed country and speaking in the language of sustainable development goals, making India a high income group country. That is a huge aspiration, and this is the job of every Indian, as PM speaks. Every Indian should strive for it in his her own ways, own fields, own areas of expertise, areas of occupation, job, and all that. Certainly, every Indian would want to see his her country as a developed bloc. It will be a dream come true for every Indian. Secondly, and most important, PM talked about removing any traces of colonial mindset, means decolonization of the Indian mindset. I have been, talking upon the very thing earlier as well in the context of research, though. I strongly feel, I strongly feel that every Indian should be free from the shackles of slavery of any sort, because slavery is a curse. Allama Iqbal has rightly, you know, put it in one of his couplets is, "Kya azadi ka ek lamha hai behtar." He would prefer one moment of freedom. From what? Gulami ki hayat javedan. From the whole or holistic life of slavery. Slavery not to be contextualized or understood simply in terms of, slavery formally or in its, colonial form. No. The time is, as Priyam rightly puts it, to decolonize the Indian mindset. We are colonized in one way or the other. The fields we work in seem to be colonized. I am a person of research. I aim in a research field. I see colonized research. I see research as a colonized phenomenon in India. That needs freedom. That needs an Indian way of looking at research. That needs an indigenous methodology. That needs our own perspectives, our own models, our own theoretical aspects. Every Indian would want that. Every Indian researcher is aspiring for that, yearning for that. And every Indian scholar, researcher, intellectual, academic has to work for that. When PM talks of the decolonization of the mind, it equally applies to us all in our own respective fields. I would come to this point later on because this is the thing that moved me from the PM's speech today. And I want to talk more on the slavery point of view in an academic perspective. Friends, taking pride in our roots. Taking pride in our roots, rightly put by PM, brings us a sense of belongingness and sense of originality. Our sense of originality is very important for our identity. We should always be proud of our identities, rather, ethnicities, our belongingness to the roots of our motherland. We should be certainly proud of it because you can impress any foreigner, any outsider, only by adapting your own ways of living and not simply by adopting theirs. There is a typical example of Englishmen when during the colonial rule people adopted their way of life, thus became slaves. Therefore, we should always take pride in who we are and a glorious civilization of more than 5,000 years. We should always be proud of it. Unity. Unity is a concern, especially in the contemporary times, wherein forces and factors of polarization have increased multifold. Therefore, unity is of paramount importance in today's India. We should always feel that sameness when it comes to belonging to a single country, irrespective of the faith, caste, creed, color, community, region, religion, etc. And this unity in diversity will be the actual unity, not just a show off of unity. And hate polarization, hate the people who give hate speeches, hate the people who polarize and divide, and love the people who unite, love the people who love humanity. This is PM's message that we all should appreciate in true sense. And lastly, sense of duty among every citizen. Sense of duty among citizens simply infers to what? Our civic sense. That has faded and that's not there. That needs to be inculcated among Indians because it is this civility which is needed in bulk. And it is this very incivility that is our curse, that is dividing us, that is, causing pollution, that is causing our roads and streets filthy. If we develop what PM rightly says, a sense of duty, we will be honest in our respective fields. We will be honest as citizens of this country, and we will deliver in right spirit, in true spirit all the time. That's what will make us ultimately great and developed. And there are a few resolutions, friends. I don't want to make it a big video. There are a few resolutions that PM has talked about in today's historic speech. Those are, respect for women, gender equality and equity, and the true respect for women has to develop. There is a larger wedge still existing, and for that, gender studies, women's studies as a subject needs to be developed in universities. It needs to be well funded. There are so many issues with the women's study centers in the country that need to be resolved. Half of the society is women. Therefore, women's studies has to be an important subject, and it has to be in the political will of the country, in the academic will of the country, in the bureaucratic will of the country, to develop the subject in letter and spirit, and to be, uh, to encourage not only women but men to study these courses. And we know the gender gap, still there exists a huge, uh, you know, gender gap in our Indian community. We still figure out as 135 out of 147, 46 countries. As far as gender equality is concerned, that means we are still far, far away from achieving that real gender equity and equality that we need to work upon. And friends, in terms of innovation, as PM stresses upon innovation and scientific spirit, Vigyan, as he Jai Vigyan, scientific spirit. This is that's still at the 46th rank in 2021. Therefore, be it HDI 0.64 in 2019 last calculated. Well, 0 is the worst and 1 is the best. We are still at 0.64, while in 1947 it was 0.11, and now it is 0.64. Therefore, we have to become 1 as far as human development index is concerned. As far as quality of life of every citizen is concerned, there has to be a serious development. As far as controlling pollution, controlling carbon emission, there has to be a strong will, both of the state and of the people, to develop this great country into a developed country. And that will come out of it is eco concern and respect for the global environment, global community, respect for water, that conservation of water, use of renewable resources of energy, controlling pollution literally, controlling carbon emissions literally. And as far as time is very less, as far as these resolutions are concerned, innovation, innovation, where we still lack. Though we are working and work has started, Niti Ayog is trying its best, and Karnataka tops the innovation, you know, index list. But there are so many states in the country that still need to work hard as far as innovation is concerned. Honestly, innovation has to be our prime area of concern. Friends, when it comes to, again, I would point out to education, a mad race, a rat race, an aspiring rate, students, lakhs of students, millions of students competing. There is one solution to it. We are a young country. 65% of the country is young. Therefore, aspiring India means aspiring Indian students. Aspiring India means aspiring Indian youth. Aspiring India means fulfilling the aspirations of this younger lot, of this young blood. They need institutions. They need many more institutions that are available at the moment. Therefore, to really address this mad and rat race for exams and huge competitions and huge disappointments, they need institutions, and they need the development of the already existing institutions that will mark the real spirit of this education sector, and that will address whole lot of problems of student community. We need more institutions, and those institutions need funding, proper funding and proper upkeep and development. Already a very beautiful and very all encompassing policy, NEP, National Education Policy 2020, has come. In order to, you know, apply it, imply it on the ground, we need our institutions that are more active, that are more vibrant, that are more ready for this. Therefore, funding and proportion of GDP in education needs to be enhanced much. Certainly, it needs to be enhanced. Friends, believe me, at the moment, institutional infrastructure in country needs a serious thought. It needs a serious, investigation and calculation that how much more infrastructural development is needed. Believe me, we need more institutions so that we can fulfill the dreams of the younger India. When it comes to already existing institutions, these institutions need huge funding. These need huge upkeep. These need huge upgrading and development. That needs political will so that these institutions last long and cater to the needs of this younger country, to the young blood of India. The Amrit Kaal of next 25 years needs really an Amrit Kaal of the educational institutions in India. Our institutions should be quality. Our institutions should develop their standard so that foreigners come to India to study and remind us of our great past, Nalanda and Takshashila. That glorious history should get repeated someday. And for that, our institutions need proper upkeep. Our institutions need proper upgradation, proper funding, and the GDP proportion that should go to education is still low. That should be increased and enhanced with, I must say, wholeheartedly and with all, open heart, with all that political will, so that our education comes to a standard. Our education develops what it deserves at the moment. And at the same time, delving on the last but important point of slavery. Friends, believe me, I have met thousands of researchers so far. Every researcher has a story of suffering with him, her. We are seeing like we have predatory academics, like we have now fake journals publishing bad content and low quality research that ultimately influences us, affects us in a bad way, that affects the standard of Indian research. That should be seriously checked. In the same way, we do have predatory and, I must say, academic predators in the guise of research supervisors, in the guise of guides who guide students for PhD and other research degrees. It has all become a den of oppression and suppression and repression. Predatory research should be talked about, friends. And already people have been posting the content, and such a theme, though lesser known so far, should get highlighted. Like Me Too as a campaign started by women highlighting the sexual violence or harassment they faced at some point of time in their lives was a welcome step, and it raised many eyebrows and raised heads throughout the world. We, in the similar vein, need a similar campaign wherein poor researchers coming from humble backgrounds are repressed, suppressed, and oppressed by their research guides, by the people who call themselves as top intellectuals or academics, and are literally turned into slaves. PM has absolutely, highlighted this point, though he talks of, you know, slavery mindset. But this decolonization in research in Indian research precisely needs a special attention. Those guides should be suspended from their services. Any research guide found indulging in any personal favor or in any undue oppression, suppression, repression of research students should be barred from his her services. There must be some accountability in terms of checks and balances when it comes to conducting research. The question is, why is it all the social capital today that has become the hallmark of Indian academics? Why is it all that it is not necessarily what you know, but who you know? Why is corruption seen as rampant in academic institutions? How are selections being done? How academics pour in to these institutions? And then what is the story of these humble researchers who come all the way with big dreams, with big aspirations into these great institutions and finally receive depression, tension, high blood pressure, many scores of other diseases related to mental torture because they are mentally tortured. The researcher community in the country should be most empowered community. Researchers need empowerment. Researchers need more fellowships, more stipends. Researcher needs to be rich. If the researcher is poor, the quality of research is poor. If the research is what I must say satiated or full in terms of his achievements, in terms of what he earns, then Indian research will go up to its expected standard. And that's what is exactly needed in Indian research today, friends. There are academics who are unduly and unnecessarily creating hurdles in the lives of these students. There are students who have gone through hell while they were researching under a particular guide. And I must say, every researcher has a story of pain to narrate when it comes to undue oppression, repression, and violence, and nepotism, and favoritism created during this their research time. Research guides need to be honest. They need not to involve their students in their personal work. I have seen, learned from many researchers that their research guides force them to write their names as first corresponding author in their own research work. Why would a student who is doing his research independently write the name of his or her supervisor? Why are supervisors so hungry about students' research? Why do supervisors force students to do their personal work? Though I'm not generalizing it. There are so many thoughtful people, so many honest people in research. Very, I must say, selfless people in research. But there are many more, I must say, in thousands and lakhs, who literally turn these students into slaves. These slaves are almost like bonded laborers, and they have to do it because they are doing research. If they say no, their thesis can get rejected, their paper cannot get published, their progress report of 6 monthly progress report cannot get signed, their fellowship may be stopped. Therefore, it needs a moment. It needs a campaign to expose those predators in research in the guise of so called supervisors or guides who are humiliating these students by making them do their personal chores, by enslaving them. Therefore, Modi ji is right when he talks of, removing every trace of this colonial mindset, making students literally as slaves is a colonial mindset. And research in India should get rid of this slavery. This sort of slavery that is existing in its very polite form, this sort of violence that is still existing in research in its most invisible form needs to be exposed. And students who do research should narrate their accounts in public, should narrate their accounts on social media, so that these culprits should get an idea of what they are doing. And this should act literally as a deterrent for many more who want to enslave their students by making them do their personal chores. They should get an idea that they may get humiliated someday and they may get exposed in public. Universities must form more policy guidelines. UGC must form guidelines in this regard. Every university should have a policy on oppression on researchers like they have on sexual harassment in campuses. Because sometimes this violence in research is more harsher than sexual harassment in campuses. It exists everywhere in campuses. There are supervisors who are very good. I'm not saying that every supervisor is a violator or is a predator, but there are many more who have literally made the lives of their students hell by threatening them, by making them do their personal work, by indulging them in writing their own papers, books, giving them undue work, giving them every day their own personal work, and forcing them to do it because they are doing research under them. This video was the motivation behind this video is to introduce you to the concept of predators in research, violence in research, invisible violence in research today. People, especially youth, aspire very high of PhD. They see empowerment in it, they see prestige and esteem in it. But when they face it, to them, it turns all opposite. Therefore, I would request all of you to follow the decolonization of every sort. Let the students take this initiative and pre research and remove the traces of this colonial slavery in research from their mindsets and start exposing these predators in academia today. Because Prime Minister to us is an inspiration, and Prime Minister, when he talks about something, it comes from a great experience. There are still colonial traces of slavery, and every Indian would agree with him on this. There are traces of slavery. And these traces of slavery, this slavery mindset, this colonial mindset exists in every institution today, which needs to be cleaned, which needs to be freed from. Therefore, gender equity and working for, you know, global gender index meeting the standards of that, healthcare, innovation, scientific temper, more institutions, more colleges, more IITs, more IIMs, working towards human development index in India, prospering in all these indices like gender index, human development index, innovation index, and many other indices together would made India great and developed. And this is the job of youth who should aspire for it. And state should wholeheartedly inspire them, support them with all the logistics needed so that India becomes a developed and great nation. As far as sense of duty, unity, polarization has to be stopped. The polarization in politics polarizes communities. And this is the job of the great leaders of the country to stop this polarization. So that together 140 crore Indians aspire for a great developed country. What is the what has been rightly highlighted by Pradhan Mantri Narendra Modi ji. And that institutional infrastructure, institutional discipline, and upgradation of the institutions, as already talked, should be the aim at the moment. I thank you all for being in this live segment and hope all of us will work in our own ways possible and act upon what has been the vision laid out by the Prime Minister today. And PM has urged everyone to contribute in all these goals. Therefore, it is the job of all of us so that we can together be a part of this great progress and development. Be it all the dismal ranks that need to be, enhanced, and be it unity, be it sense of belongingness, be it mother languages, be it, the identity, we must all be working towards these goals. Thank you so much for being in this live segment. I thank you all. Thank you so much.